So imagine this. You finally achieved the American dream of buying and owning a home. According to some standards, you have made it. But just as you start to settle into your new chapter, you turn on the news. Your excitement turns to dread as you heard the devastating headlines. The housing market is crashing and your home value plummets. Suddenly, your dream feels like a nightmare. What do you do right now?
The worst housing recession on record was actually during the Great Depression around 1929, when home values plummeted up to 67%.
Well, this is the question a lot of people ask me all the time. Robert, we really want to buy a house, but we feel that the market may crash anytime soon. And long time ago, my crystal ball broke, so I don't have it any longer. So I wouldn't have an option to tell you what's going to happen in this market. But the good thing is I can interpret data, and I can tell you what data tells me when it comes to the housing market. So let's start looking into what's going on here and what kind of advice you can take from this video. So number one is it's a nightmare scenario if the market crashes, right? Let's just all be honest. Buying a house right now, especially in the months previous of a market crash, can be devastating for so many people, especially if you were buying something with low down payment and did not have enough reserves for unforeseen events. That can be a huge nightmare for anybody. Market crashes reduce home values, and we'll talk more about that later, but those home values, they have a sudden drop, and then they have a gradual drop down the road over a period of time. We'll talk that about later. There can be a personal embarrassment, right? Like this is like, you remember when your grandpa, your dad were telling me, don't buy a house right now because the prices are so high and you shouldn't be investing on that, right? You could feel like, okay, dad, okay, grandpa, you were right. I should not have bought a house right now. And let's just be honest, right? That's the common thing many homeowners have is, if I buy a house and the market crashes in the middle of these things. But as I said, nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows what it is. But as of today, as of where we stayed in 2024, I don't foresee a market crash, but it could potentially be like a softening of the market. Now, the reality it is that what kind of impact the market crash can have? Well, an impact on a market crash, it treats everybody differently, right? From the person that just bought a house, the one that has been in a house owned a property in the last 3 to 5 years or 7+ years, or the one that the house already paid off. It treats people in a different way. Not everybody will be impacted when it comes to a market crash, right? Let's just all be honest, right? The reality is the prices definitely get reduced. And here's where I wanted to kind of slow a little bit, because market crashes, as we saw in 2008, it does a drastic drop immediately that it has to do with other economic factors, stocks, jobs, unemployment, inflation, interest rates, and so on. But then all of a sudden the prices continue to go down over a longer period of time. It's not like you do a drop, it crashes, and that's the end of it. Not necessarily. Sometimes there has to be gradual reductions in prices until the market finds a bottom, okay? It wasn't until probably end of 2010, 2011, when the market probably found kind of like a bottom. Depending on the areas in where you were located, it could have been sooner or later than those years. So your options are here for you are going to be so you should buy even if the market crashes, and that means you have to make it work within your budget. Do you really want to buy something within your own, like that you can afford within your means without stretching too much? Or you basically don't buy because you don't see the need to buy. And the reality is that this can go in so many directions. The price of homes are based on other properties that have sold nearby, half a mile around it for the last 6 to 12 months. So it's very different from other things. And if a market is reducing in certain area, most likely all of the other homes are going to follow the same path. If the market is going up, most likely other homes are going to follow the same path, unless there are some other adverse things that are happening that nobody has any control over. So nearby sales are definitely what is going to impact the increase or decrease of prices in a particular area. So in terms of timing, I said to you in 2007, 2008, and we found the bottom in 2010, 2011. Yeah, that is typical. It's about from 6 months up to 2 years to find the bottom the market is looking. And how do we find the bottom of the market? Well, it's onto that reabsorption rate. The people are starting to buy those houses back again is when they feel compelled to do those things. So if you don't not buying those houses is going to sit on the market, and that's just the path that normally happens. So there are not enough buyers, sellers are going to continue to hit the market, and more sellers are going to inundate the market, because that is the right word, inundate, like a flood. And those houses, the ones that are priced pretty heavy, are going to sink to the bottom. The ones that are priced lighter or lower are going to stay afloat. And those are the ones that most likely buyers are wanting to grab and fish and hook. So there's always going to be a buyer regardless of a market crash or not. It only happens what kind of buyer are we going to be talking about. So now let's just run different scenarios. If you really have been thinking about buying right now, and you are kind of stretching to buy a house because high interest rate, high prices, and you're not being able to do inspections, chances are that you are going to continue to feel that way. And if a market crashes tomorrow, you will probably going to feel the pain if you're stretching yourself to buy a house in this kind of environment. So my thing to you is, if you can save a little bit more, so that way, not only if you have to stretch, you're going to have to stretch. It's going to be your decision, but at least have enough money saved up for unforeseen expenses, and especially the cost of carrying all your monthly expenses at home. You should have about 6 months of reserves. If you can have 12 months, it's even better, just in case anything happens and unforeseen, right? That's just one thing. Another different scenario is you actually buy on what you can afford. Yeah, you wish to live in this house, but you can only afford this. And some people settle just to buy what they can afford. Now, the downturn of that is, if the market crashes and later on you want to buy something bigger, yeah, you'll be on the underwater, as is called the terminology. You probably be underwater and won't be able to afford to buy a house later on. So that's a very significant issue right there. And then you decide to wait. You don't really buy a house, you just wait and just ride that wave to see what happens. Is that a smart option? Potentially, but you also remember rents have been going up a lot, and not necessarily means that rents may go down. Sometimes they may not go down, because those buyers that were on the fence about buying, they become renters. And then if there are more renters out there than properties for rent, then supply and demand applies to those things. So that's very important to understand a lot of these things. So my advice to potential buyers when it comes to this is the following. Market timing, it's something that nobody has any control, and it's always going to feel like it's uncertain, and it's going to be scary that you buy something that you lose it. I mean, compared to buying a vehicle, you know, you buy a brand new car, the moment you drive it out of the lot in the dealer, you know you lost some money. Not necessarily in real estate, but it still feels like a little bit uncertain sometimes, that you don't know what's going to happen when you buy that. Rather than trying to control the market, concentrate on your financial stability, what you can control, how ready you are to buy a house. Remember, there are those things you can control and those things that you cannot control, but you can control how much money you can put aside to buy a house and how much money you can put aside for unforeseen expenses. So concentrate on those things rather than the other one. Owning a property still remains a big financial achievement for so many people, and I think a lot of buyers of mine, clients, will agree with me that in the last buying a house in the last 40 years and before, it has been kind of like a nice good thing, like a nice big chunk of money that they've been able to put aside for whatever reasons they wanted to do it. So it still remains a good thing to do down the road. Remember that even corporations are buying homes. That just tells you how important it is to own a piece of real estate. Now corporations are competing with home buyers. So it's very important to understand those things. And you know what? And just this is about preparation, right? Nobody's prepared to get married. Nobody's prepared to give a birth to anybody, but you can control certain circumstances that you can do. So the more money you have aside for the things I've mentioned before, the better it is. And that concludes the video today. I hope you really like this video. Do me a favor, click that like button. And if you see a lot more value on all the videos that I've put together, smash that subscribe button and just wait for the next video next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.